Welcome to Ep.3 of the Real Estate Wholesaling podcast, where we discuss finding, financing, and facilitating off-market real estate deals. I'm your host, Deji Odunton, and I'm joined today on the show by the Mike Lee to discuss and share his knowledge on wholesaling. In today's episode, Mike and I discuss wholesaling end-to-end. I mean end-to-end, guys. We discuss what real estate wholesaling is, how to get started with wholesaling, and how to build an active business out of wholesaling. We also discuss everything around acquisitions, how to find off-market deals, how to structure the best deals, and how to get these deals under contract. And finally, we touch on the business of disposition. How do we exit from these deals that we find off-market and the different strategies that can be used to exit off-market deals. So you definitely don't want to miss this. So be sure to listen to the end. And before we dive in, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who is tuning in. If you're a fan of this podcast, hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. And if you give us a 5-star rating and review, that would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the Real Estate Wholesaling podcast.
Thank you so much, Deji, for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show, man. I have to say you've been such a huge inspiration to me and my wholesaling journey. Like I usually look forward to a lot of brainstorming conversations. It always pumps me up whenever we have a conversation. And it's really exciting.
Me as well. It's really good brainstorming. We just blasting out ideas, talking about, taking it to the next levels. It's a lot of fun.
I still recall, I think it was November when you called me and I was sounding like I just got hit by a bus. And you said, "Hey man, what's wrong?" And I was like, it was clearly the market. Like Bank of Canada has really stressed me. Bank of Canada had stressed me last year. So, after we spoke for a couple of minutes, I was like, I felt so pumped up, so thank you very, very much for, a lot of the insights you share. And what I'm most excited about is the fact that, a lot of our listeners would get to hear your story and, how you've built your business to what it is today. So thank you very much for joining us today, man.
I'm excited. I'm excited to share any of my knowledge with your listeners. And also, it's always good to have, anytime we connect and anytime we have one of these chats, it's a lot of fun.
Cool, man. So let's dive in. For the listeners that don't know who you are, do you maybe want to share a little bit about yourself?
No problem. Okay, so my name is Michael Lee. I am an investor and wholesaler from Toronto, Ontario. I've been involved in real estate investing for 4.5 years now. I had a sales and marketing background prior to getting involved into real estate. And about 4.5 years ago, I was looking for my next opportunity. I had 0 contacts in real estate, 0 experience in real estate, and I didn't have any capital either. So I was really looking for an opportunity, and I actually came across another wholesaler that this was at a meetup group. So I came to a meetup group. Somebody presented how they made a $70,000 wholesale fee, just pretty much just flipping paper. And somebody asked, how long did it take you to do that? He said, well, it's, maybe about 3 or 4 hours of work. Okay. At that moment, I'm sold. I am no longer Michael Lee, whatever I am. I'm Michael Lee, the wholesaler. And the rest is history.
Okay. So $70,000 in 3 hours. In today's market, how feasible is that? Do you see that happening very frequently nowadays? Or how do you compare and contrast how the market was when you started and now?
Okay. Guys, there's always going to be deals in any market, whether we were in a seller's market for the last few years, and this is a really favorable market for people that are flipping houses. So, if you're wholesaling in Ontario, market's going up like crazy, you might be getting multiple offers on your properties. But now that the interest rates have been creeping up, it's a lot harder for buyers to qualify for
Yeah.
loans. And when you go to wholesale, you might have less total buyers at the table. But
Yeah.
to speak to wholesale fees, I mean, at the end of November, we just did like a 90K wholesale fee. So they're still
Okay.
there. They're maybe a little less frequent, but they're still there.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I see something in your background, and I recall that you had won an award sometime a couple of months back. Do you mind sharing with us, what that is and what the award was and your experience when you
Thank
received that?
you. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm just going to pick up the camera and just shift it over for a quick second. But it's called the Seven Figure Award. It's from a mastermind that I'm a part of, Seven Figure Flipping. And you qualify for that award by achieving a minimum of 7 figures of gross profit in your business annually, right?
Whoa.
So,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, really a blessing for the award. I got to give a lot of credit to my team because at this point I'm not like a one man army of wholesaling. It's not just me, right? So I got a whole team sitting beside me, and it speaks a lot to my team, right? But yeah, that's the award right over there.
Fantastic, man.
Just got it in the mail about 2 weeks ago. So
Okay.
I'm happy.
Yeah, it looks beautiful, man.
Thank you.
And we're going to dive into what you just said, really building a business out of wholesaling, right? Because I find that there's quite a number of wholesalers, or the perception is you can only wholesale yourself, or it's like a one-man business. But the truth is, at some point, it could very well be a business as well. So that will be something that I'll be interested in unpacking as we go further into the show. So just kicking things off, from your standpoint, for listeners who are maybe new to wholesaling, how would you define wholesaling at a very high level?
Okay, wholesaling at a very high level. It is similar to the concept of flipping houses, but you're not exactly flipping houses. Okay, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be sourcing a deal off market.
Okay.
You're going to be getting the deal under contract to purchase with the seller directly.
Okay.
And then what you're going to put into your agreement of purchase is an assignment clause.
Okay. So it's possible that you and I speak so frequently, and the words and terminologies that we use, we are very familiar with it. So when you say off market, what do you mean by off market?
What I mean by off market is this seller is coming directly to you. They are selling their house by owner, not through a real estate agent, but directly themselves. So you yourself as a wholesaler are going direct to seller to get the deal. You're sourcing a deal direct from seller. Typically, that's going to allow you to get a much better deal on the property, like a discount. Okay, and then you're going to have this assignment clause. The assignment clause allows you to legally assign your equity in that contract to another buyer at a higher price, right?
Okay.
So if I go direct to a seller and I say, Mr. Seller, I'm going to give you $500,000 to your property. They say yes. We get that on paper with an assignment clause. I find another buyer that wants to buy it for $530,000.
Okay.
For example, I get paid the difference between 500 and 530, which is $30,000. That's wholesaling in a nutshell.
Thank you for that explanation. Now, there's something I would like you to touch on. Why would a seller, in their right senses, why would a seller sell to you directly versus going to a real estate agent to sell on the MLS? And the MLS being the multiple listing service, it's on the internet. The whole world can see that property. Why would they rather sell to you privately than go to a real estate agent and allow that property to be viewed by the whole world to get possibly the best price?
Okay, so you actually touched on it right there. These types of sellers, they don't want the best price.
Okay.
They are more concerned. Their main trigger points are they want speed and they want convenience.
Okay.
As a wholesaler, this is the value that you're bringing. you can come into a seller's property. Now, there's so many reasons why a seller's going to be motivated to sell at a discount. Typically, there's a combination of personal distress, property distress, and they also need it done very quickly.
Okay.
If all three of those conditions are present, you're probably going to have the makings of a good wholesale deal. If only one of those conditions is present, it's going to be difficult for you to get a great discount. But that seller might not be a good fit for that specific seller. That, for example, they want top price, but they want to sell it fast too. Yeah. That's not going to be a good fit, right? So I would say on the acquisition side, I know you're going to ask some questions about this soon, but I would say on the acquisition side, there's a lot of time that's invested into making sure, sorting the sellers, making sure that they're actually a good fit for what it is that we have to offer. Because we're not trying to convince people to go with us. We just want to make sure it's a good fit to begin with from the jump, right?
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. One way that I usually explain this from my personal situation to people is, when I was coming into the country a couple of years back, and it's quite typical with immigrants, where you are living a country and you want to sell your stuff, your personal belongings. You have a new life ahead of you. Your flight is in a month. You're thinking about the beautiful life that you're going to experience in this new country. Chances are that some of the things that you are going to sell them at a discount. It's not because you don't know the full value of those things, but you are more concerned about the fact that you don't want these things lying around while you're out of the country. You're closing a chapter. You don't necessarily want these things there. So as you said, there's a lot of reasons why someone would sell at a discount. It's usually not always price. And I think there's the perception that price is the only factor that sellers consider when selling their properties. So
absolutely. And by the way, Deji, I think, if we take properties out of the equation, everyone has become a motivated seller at some point in time for something,
Tell me.
Well, sure. I dropped out of university in my fourth year, my last year of university, because I ended up getting into sales, right?
Yep.
Later on, I got a bunch of textbooks that I paid, I don't know how much money for, right? But they're useless to me now, right? So, if somebody comes along and they're like, hey, I'll take like 3 or 4 textbooks off your hands for $100. Yeah, okay. I'm not using them.
Oh, perfect. Right? That's another good example. And you know what? We just recently completed a deal out in St. Catharines, and we had furniture in the house. When we sold the property, the new buyer said, hey, we don't want these items. And it was a condition for closing. Okay. So I was like, I need to get these items out. Now, they were worth something. Well, I actually gave out some of them for free because I was like,
you don't care anymore.
These items wouldn't stop me from closing this deal. Like, I was looking more at what I was going to get from the closing of this deal versus what the value of these items were. So I think a lot of these examples that we've shared really explains and gives credence and context to the reasons why sellers actually sell their properties at a discount. There's a lot of other motivating factors outside of price. So thanks for sharing that, man. For anyone who is listening, that's one of the things that you want to identify. It's really not just price alone. Once you identify any other reasons why the seller wants to sell, that could be a motivating factor for them to sell to you. Okay, so you mentioned that in November, you had a 90K wholesale fee. Could you tell us how you typically get these deals? Because I know that's a question that people are asking. Like, where do I find these types of sellers? How do I spot them? What channels do I use to get them? So what channels do you use to find these deals? And are there any channels that you've tried and you're like, these channels don't work?
Okay. I have a way of thinking about this because I have a lot of people that ask me that question. Like, how exactly do you get leads? The answer for me might be different for the answer for somebody else. And it's very market specific as well. Okay. So for instance, by the way, just to lay it all out, I do many different forms of marketing. I've pretty much tried almost everything and to varying degrees of success. Okay.
Okay.
Everything, in my opinion, everything works if you work it hard enough. right?
Got it.
So if you're going to do direct mail, for example, and you put out 100 direct mail flyers, you're probably not going to see a lot of results. But if you put out 100,000 flyers, you're probably going to see some results. It's all in how hard you're working a certain method and strategy.
The consistency of it.
Correct. Now there's another layer to that though, because I might put flyers out in, for example, Sudbury, for example, and I might get a certain response. And I might find that if I put flyers out in Toronto, the response level is a little bit different.
Yep.
So it's kind of market specific. I don't know if that makes sense to you, what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is, as a wholesaling, it's a marketing business. It's all about lead generation. Okay. Whatever you do will work if you work it hard enough, but you might find that certain strategies work better in certain markets.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
In addition to that, there was a conversation that I had with someone, and I have a view that you could also play this to your strengths, right? So for example, you mentioned at the start of the call that you actually had a sales and marketing background.
Correct.
Right? So I would imagine that the strategies that you use would also play to that background. So for example, there was an investor that I spoke with who had a relationship with someone who ran a pest control business.
Boom. There you go.
And he was asking for different strategies. And I said, you know what? You could do all the strategies you want to do, but why don't you leverage the strategy that gives you a competitive advantage? You have a direct relationship with someone who runs a business where the persona of the clientele match and suit the persona of the clientele that you are looking for. So that's a win-win. And I checked in with him about a month ago, and he actually got a couple of deals from that channel. So to your point,
that's fantastic. I love hearing that.
So to your point, there's more to it's really just marketing. It's lead generation. How are you able to get deals from any channels that you think you have an advantage in? If, for example, I'm a digital marketer, chances are that my highest and best, time will be spent generating leads via social media ads or like website ads versus doing door knocking. Right. So
correct. For example, sometimes people approach me and they say, do you do door knocking for leads? Now, personally, I don't, but I've done a lot of door knocking. I've knocked thousands and thousands of doors. So if I really wanted to generate leads that way, could I do it? Probably. Well, yes, I can, obviously. I know I can do it.
Yeah.
So I can do that, right? But if somebody that has literally no sales experience at all tells me that they want to do wholesaling and they want to generate leads, that might not be my first recommendation for something that they're going to try. I was just thinking about something as you were talking. I want to give an example of something that actually did not work for me at all.
Okay.
And also speak to my thoughts about it. So a couple years ago, I wanted to try a new marketing strategy. And so I decided to do radio ads.
Right? Okay.
And I spent thousands of dollars. This radio ad, I tuned it, I tweaked it. Every time that I put it out and I got no results. So then I tweaked the message. I made it even better, more catchy. And I put up the message again. And by the end of it, I had this like super catchy, jingle on radio. And I spent thousands and thousands of dollars. And I didn't even get one lead from it. Not even one. Okay. But that being said, it does not mean that radio doesn't work. It doesn't mean It doesn't work. I wasn't working it correctly yet, right? So
it could also have been a time in, like, if you had maybe continued for a while, maybe you could have gotten the lead, maybe.
I'm 100% certain, right? So anyone that's listening, if you figure out how to use radio ads in Ontario, give me a call.
Give me a call as well. So there's also one channel that I've tried that got me 0 leads, 0, 0, 0. So I tried magazine ads, and
okay.
I don't know why I thought I was like an innovator. It was a new thing. I was going to get like thousands of leads, but I put an ad in a magazine, and I think it was like the second page was like maybe half the page, and I did 3 issues. So like 3 months. Man, it was zero, like literally zero. I was shocked. I thought the number was wrong. I called the number, it was correct. I'm like, whoa, like that bad? So, so
This is marketing though, right? This is marketing.
okay. But one channel that you did not mention was the MLS. And a few weeks ago, I saw on your stories that you actually did a deal off the MLS. So
Yes.
a lot of people think you can only wholesale or you can only find deals off market. But in this case, you actually found a deal on the MLS that millions of people have seen, and you eventually assigned the deal. Like, we've done it as well a couple of times, but I find that when I speak about it, a lot of people think, how did that even happen? So would you be able to share, some insights on how you made that happen?
Okay. Full transparency, I've done maybe 3 or 4 MLS deals. However, the sellers usually contact us somehow while it's on MLS,
Okay.
So we end up speaking to the seller directly in some shape or fashion. So let me give you examples, guys, of some ways that this has happened and worked out. One time, by the way, you never know what's going on at the other side. So if you see a great deal on MLS, I would encourage you to make an offer if you think that you can get it. So the first deal, I'm going to get to the one I just did, but I'm going to give you a few examples. So the very first MLS deal I did, a seller contacted me. They had a estate sale in Cambridge. Apparently there was a few squatters living in the property that were in-law family members.
Okay.
So they weren't allowing access to the property for showings. The listing had no photos, and it just said there's extreme, like very high amounts of renovation required, like handyman special for contractors only, no access granted. And it's just a blurry shot from outside. And the seller contacted me and they say, listen, I got to sell this thing. And I pulled it up and I said to them that it's on MLS.
Yeah.
Why are you calling me to buy your house? She's like, I really need it gone quick. And okay, well, why didn't anyone else make an offer? And she's like, I don't know. No one's making offers. Okay, I'll make you an offer. How about and then I called her back and I said, hey, what about this number? And she said yes right away, which is very uncommon.
Whoa.
When you
Very.
when you call a motivated seller and you give them a wholesaler's first offer, there's like
and they say yes.
There's a 99% chance they're going to say no to it if you're making a real low offer. So she said
99.9% chance.
99.9. So she said yes to it. I'm like, what? I don't understand this. It's on MLS. How is nobody making offers on this? And it was really low price too. Even not like full list price was very low. So we start trying to call the listing agent. And it took a week almost to get a hold of the agent. They were on vacation in Washington or something. So basically, the reason why no one was making offers is because no one could actually reach the agent.
Reach him. Got it.
And
Okay,
submit an offer. It was crazy. So yeah, we just submitted the offer. We told the agent that the seller's already agreed to the offer. And we submitted it and we got it accepted and we closed on it. It was a fantastic deal. Gigantic margins. So that was the first one.
So you closed on it or you assigned it?
I flipped that one myself.
Oh, okay.
And it was very lucrative, very, very lucrative. So that was a good deal. The one that I just most recently did, it had been on the MLS. The seller called us right before they listed it. And they said, I want to sell my house. And they weren't all the way there just yet as far as being ready to sell. So we let it kind of simmer. And then we followed up with them every so often.
Yeah.
The next time we called them, they had it listed for, the next time we reached them, it had been listed for like 2 or 3 weeks. And they said, well, it's listed now. What can you offer? And we said, well, here's our offer. And then they decided not to accept it. Meanwhile, the market's going down because this is like 2022, mid to end of summer 2022. So the market's going down. So she didn't accept our offer. And then a little while later, It's been on the market now for almost 90 days.
Ooh.
So we get on the phone with the seller again. Hey, what's going on? She's like, listen, I really need to sell this thing. The whole situation's changed. Her motivation's gone up through the roof. Listen, I need to sell this thing. Get me an offer. Let me get this, let me find a way to accept your offer. And then we made an offer that was much lower than the offer that we had made about 45 days ago. It was like 50 or 60K lower. And she has an agent now too. And we still got it under contract, and we wholesaled it very easily. Very easily.
Wow.
Within a couple days, we wholesaled it. Yeah.
Wow. So just want to use this opportunity to, to point out that, again, it goes to show that like a deal is a deal, irrespective of where the deal is coming from, whether it's
correct
on the market or off market. It's really based off of the motivation of the seller, right?
Correct. By the time we had it under contract, okay, this is our marketing pitch, right? So we put out marketing. I know you're going to ask me about that later. So we put out marketing, and the hook was the cheapest house in this town in over 3 years. So, I mean, obviously it's going to drive attention, right? So we were getting tons and tons of phone calls, and yeah, before long we had it assigned. It's a marketing thing.
Did the seller see that? Did the seller see the marketing?
I don't know if they did, although they did, like, they're aware that we assigned it in the end, right? It wasn't a gigantic wholesale fee, but I mean, we made some money there, and it was
I had an experience,
relatively easy enough, so that's not too bad.
I had an experience. This wasn't an MLS deal, but I had an experience with a deal that we put out the marketing, and very similar to how you phrased the marketing. It was like insane discount, and the seller saw it, and they called their lawyer, and the lawyer was like, "Oh, you are telling my clients that they are insane to have sold to you." It was like we lost the deal. And I discussed that on the podcast with Sean. You guys can go back to listen to that. But they saw that marketing, and it was quite interesting. But thank you for sharing your thoughts on the MLS deals.
No problem. I would say, look, if you sell on MLS or you sell off market as a wholesale, sometimes you're gonna do deals with people. I'm not even talking about I'm doing deal with the seller. I'm talking about I'm selling my own deal, right? Sometimes you're going to do a deal with someone, and then a couple of weeks later, you're going to have seller's remorse. It's happened, right? But I can say that 90% of the sellers that do work with us, even off market at discounted prices, they're happy with what they're getting. Like, they're happy that the deal's getting done, And the seller that in the case of that MLS deal, okay, when we set up a walkthrough for the property and the buyer came to the walkthrough, I don't usually personally go. I usually do virtual wholesaling.
Okay.
But this is an MLS deal. It was kind of unique situation. There's all these realtors involved. So I personally went to the property, and the septic bed is flooding. Like, this is a rural property, and the septic, like, there's water gushing out of the ground, right? So no one's buying this deal. That's my point. The seller was extremely happy that someone just bought it for any price. The water was just literally flooding out of the ground like a water fountain.
I was going to say like a fountain, but not the kind of fountain that you want in your house.
No.
Okay, so this is definitely very insightful. Now, a lot of people will think, like, you've shared how you're getting these deals. You're getting a $90,000 wholesale fee. But for people that are just starting, if they want to decide their first step, I know that you started your business in a very similar time that we are in right now. It was sort of a recessionary period as well. What would you say to a newbie who is looking to start in this market? What would be their first step? What do they need to do? Do they need money to start? Do they need any sort of knowledge to start? How do they navigate the market that we are in to start building a business in real estate like you did when you started?
Okay. If you have, for example, $10 in your pocket and that's all you got access to, I would encourage you to find a way to have a consistent income aside from wholesaling. You can't expect to come into this business and run it like an actual business if you have no money. So I hear a lot of people talking about how you can get into wholesaling with no money. I think you definitely need some money to do it seriously. I recommend maybe even $10,000 to start can probably get you going. In regards to what I would recommend to someone who's just getting started, right now you need to be a fantastic networker. You got to get out there, meet all the buyers that you can. Your buyers are they're like gold right now, because with the interest rates climbing up the way they did, there's a lot of people who are having difficulty getting mortgages, right? So what you're going to do as a wholesaler is you're going to connect a motivated seller. There's tons of them right now. They're not as difficult to find as they were in 2021, right? Tons of motivated sellers, not a lot of buyers, right? So get as much buyers as you can that are actual serious buyers. I would actually qualify them very heavily as a new wholesaler. Can you buy cash? If you're not cash, how big, how much money do you have available to throw down? And how quickly can you make a decision if I bring you a deal? And what is your criteria for a deal? Let me find you what you're looking for. So that's what I would recommend to you. And the second recommendation I have is stay patient. Stay patient, stay humble. What I've noticed with wholesaling is that every 5 or 6 deals is a pretty big wholesale fee. And the other ones, the other deals in between they're not as big wholesale fees, right? So as a wholesaler, if you don't have a lot of capital, you might have 3, 4, or 5 deals that you do where you're kind of just paying the bills. You might make a 10K fee, 20K fee, 10K fee, 20K fee, and then all of a sudden you have a 60, 70K wholesale, right? And those deals are what changes everything for you. Right? So I encourage you to be patient until you hit those deals, because then your whole life can change.
I'd like to add to that. So you're speaking more around consistency, right? Because you have to keep doing marketing for you to get to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth deal. From your standpoint, and I know I have fallen prey to this, you put out marketing the first time, maybe you get a bunch of calls, no deals. You have to put it the second time, the third time. How have you found, success or how have you been able to manage that hurdle to consistently put out marketing, even when it feels like, the first one actually didn't make me money, but I'm going to continuously do this?
Okay. That's a good question. I believe that one of the highest return on investment you can get is with marketing, if you know what you're doing, right? So when you are doing marketing campaigns and they don't generate results, you need to think about the way that you think about it needs to change, right? You're just tweaking it so that you can get to the point where it's delivering you a very high return of investment. But in order to get to the point where it's a very high return of investment, you need to get through the tweaking phase, where there's certain things that are working, there's certain things that aren't working, right? And if you equal out everything, over, let's say, a course of a year, you're going to find that your return on investment is very high if you're marketing effectively. Now, if you're just an awful marketer, I would suggest you to find someone to work with that knows marketing. So there's something to be said about skill level, but even if you're a skilled marketer, you're kind of doing a shot in the dark when you're starting out. You don't know if something's going to work great for you or not right away. It usually doesn't. You have to expect that it's not going to work. You have to give marketing campaigns, 3 to 6 months to even play out, right? And then now you have some data to work with. When you have data, you can tweak it, make adjustments, and then hit the market harder with what you feel will be effective.
This last comment also ties to what you said about the perception that you don't need money to do wholesaling, right? For you to be able to go 3 to 6 months tweaking, doing marketing campaigns, possibly not getting a deal in the first or second month, that's money spent, money out of pocket. And then when you eventually get a deal, there's actually time lag between when you get the deal assigned and when the deal actually closes and you get paid. So it's also very critical for people to manage their cash flow as well.
Absolutely. So on average, I find that it's a 90-day sales cycle. From the time that you do the marketing, the lead comes in, negotiation, get it under contract, wholesale it, then closing, right? So the negotiation might take you between 2 to 4 weeks on average.
Yeah, about.
And then you might need a week to market it for wholesale, 1 to 2 weeks, and then you might need about a month to get it closed from there, right? So it's a 90-day sales cycle, in my opinion, on average.
That's about right.
Faster. Yeah. In order to, if you don't have much capital, I would just suggest you guys, there's so many ways that you can make money on the side. When I was starting out, I took a sales job that I was doing part-time. So I was doing sales part-time, and then I was driving Uber at night. So the sales job is to make me just pay for my bills. I'm driving Uber to pay for my marketing, right? But you'd be surprised what you can do with like $100 and Uber is giving me $100 a day, right?
Yeah.
That's me starting out. I'm broke, super broke. But now I'm driving Uber and I got $100 a day in marketing spend. Okay, that's $3,000 a month roughly.
Yeah.
Okay, $3,000 a month. You do that over 3, 4, 5, 6 months. You're going to make some deals happen, right? So, but you're right. Absolutely, you got to stay patient. It's not going to happen if it does happen overnight, that is good, but you can't expect it to happen that way.
That expectation that you set really, really critical, because I also got into that phase as well. I thought when you assign a deal, you get paid upon assignment. And I remember my first deal. It was, I was actually negotiating with the seller to push the closing out. I was like, hey, let's push it out like 2 months. Like, hey, you could close whenever you want. But I didn't know that was when I got paid. So I remember that I'm like, hey, so I asked my like, hey, when would I get paid? He's like, when the deal closes. I'm like, what? I'm going to wait till then. So cash flow management is key. Being able to set the right expectations and understand that it's not a quick 10K 3 hours, as you said. Like the person that inspired you to start wholesaling, he said 3 hours. Typically, it's not really 3 hours. There's the marketing, there's the negotiation, there's the walkthroughs, there's the offer, there's the disposition. So it's not always 3 hours, but it's good to set that expectation.
It can happen, but it doesn't usually happen this way, right?
Yeah.
We've had deals that we basically do almost no work, and they're so easy to make money on, but that's not the majority of the deals. Let's be honest. The majority of the deals, there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done. And a lot of moving parts.
Got it. Okay. So in terms of the people that you would need to get a deal done, right? So you mentioned that if you're not good at marketing, you find someone who is good at marketing. If you were to identify the power team members that you think are really critical to your wholesaling business, who would you recommend that new wholesalers start reaching out to, start connecting with, to be able to do wholesaling?
All right. So it depends on what skills you bring to the table. You want to get someone that complements what you're not good at, right? So if, for example, you're not good at running numbers, maybe get someone to help you with those types of activities. If you're not good at sales, but you want to be involved in wholesaling, find some way that you can be involved in the operations and work with someone that can do the acquisition calls with the sellers, for example, right? Okay. I had someone that approached me once, and they wanted to learn wholesaling. And they were already a seasoned investor. They hadn't done any wholesales, but they'd done several flips. So they understand the process. And as we got to talking, I realized they're not very good at sales, but they're very skilled. They are very skilled legitimately at running a tight operation. So as we got to talking, I I first encouraged them to generate leads. They successfully figured out how to do this.
Yep.
Then they got on the phone with the sellers and everything is falling apart, right? So they came back to me and they said, look, there's leads coming in, but I don't know what to do. And I said, okay, let's hear you on the phone. And I listened and, okay, is there any way you can get someone else to do this? And they did that. And it was the missing piece, right? So the point is, find someone that complements you. In terms of all the different positions and things that you could do in the business, there's marketing, there's you can have a virtual assistant, somebody that does administrative work for you. That is a role.
Yep.
In terms of what takes place in the seller journey, the next step is acquisitions, right? So you can have someone involved there. The next step is once a deal's under contract, you would actually move into the disposition phase. So that's going to involve marketing the property and also selling it off market, right? So there's a piece there where someone can get involved. And then all of that, if it all works out, you got to coordinate the transaction now. There's got to be someone behind a keyboard basically making sure that all the moving pieces are coming together and the deal gets to the finish line and closes, right? So there's a lot of different places you can get involved. And the answer is going to be different for each person, right? But for me, the very first position I outsourced was that administrative person. So I relied 100% on my own sales skills.
Yeah.
I'm going to bet on myself here, 100%. I'm going to just allow myself to do all the sales, and I'm going to outsource everything else, which is what I did at the start, right?
Okay.
So all I did at the beginning for myself as a beginner, I did marketing to get leads. I did the sales calls with the sellers.
Okay.
I found a partner. I even found a renovation partner. So I have flips going on. I don't even know how to change a light bulb. I outsource everything. If it's not my skill set, I'm not doing it, right?
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers your question exactly. The answer is going to be different for everybody.
It does,
But
and it's a
you gotta work
perfect
to your
segue.
strengths.
So it does, and it's a perfect segue to my next question, which is trying to pull down the curtain and walk us through a day in the life of a seven-figure business, right? Because you mentioned things like leverage, outsourcing, and when you get to that level, you are really talking about building a business, running a business. Because with a business, you can't do everything yourself. So you run a seven-figure operation. Do you mind sharing with us, how that works? What's a day in your life? How do you handle leads coming in? Just pull down the curtains for us.
Okay. All right. The difference, I'm going to simplify it down and answer it simply. This is not a full answer. If you want to ask me more questions to expand on it, fine, no problem. Okay. The difference between a business that makes $10,000 and a difference that makes $1 million is leads.
Okay.
If you don't have leads coming in, if you don't have a certain amount of leads coming in, you can't have $1 million business. Okay. So that's the starting phase. Now, the next step is you need to put the systems in place. So if you have, for example, 20 leads coming in a day and you have no system, it's going to be chaos, complete chaos. That's why it's important to build yourself one step at a time. Don't grow too aggressively to a point where you can't control the growth anymore because you don't have any systems. But $1 million business is going to have all those different segments of the business handled, right?
Okay.
So all the segments I just mentioned. So leads come in, that's marketing. Marketing's handled. We have all these different lead flow channels. X number of leads come in a day. Okay, then we have people that are dedicated on the phone. They're going to be able to qualify all the sellers, find out if they're motivated or not. We sort them accordingly, right? And then once we have motivated sellers, we analyze all those deals. We underwrite all those deals. We have a person on our team that actually underwrites all the deals. This person is an underwriter, a deal underwriter with an appraisal background. Okay. So they just underwrite. Okay. Then we make offers based on the underwriting. Everything is segmented. Okay. We get a deal under contract. Now we have a whole process for dispositions as well. Right. But in order to run a seven-figure wholesaling business, you need to have all sections of your business You have to have departments for your business, and you have to have the systems dialed in. Your business is only going to be as successful as the systems.
Got it. Okay. So walk us through, for example, you highlighted the fact that you have, a deal analyzer or a deal underwriter, that runs all your numbers. So
yeah, that's a top secret. I'm giving you some of the secret sauce, but it's okay.
So, can you walk us through, how you analyze deals? Because I hear a lot of questions like, how do you come up with your offer? How do you come up with a number? A seller says, I want to sell. How do you get that number?
Okay, so there are two main ways that we do it. You can create a spreadsheet that you can punch in. So hopefully it's simple enough that you can punch in a few numbers and it'll give you your number, whatever your max allowable offer is. In terms of simplifying an offer down, let's say you don't have a spreadsheet in front of you. You can use napkin math, okay? And the napkin math is going to be slightly different in each market, but it's going to be pretty similar. So let's say that you have a house and the after repair value, the ARV, that's what it's called in wholesale. We call this the ARV. The ARV is $500,000. In my market, Toronto, we take 80% of 500,000. In markets that are not that populated, you might want to go down to 70%. Okay. So 80% of 500,000, now we're at 400,000. We're going to subtract the estimated renovation budget, and I actually padded a little bit. Okay. So whatever you think a renovation is going to cost, you got to kind of, I'm looking at a lead, all cosmetic renos on the property. It needs paint, flooring, lighting, new kitchen. Okay. Let's just say I think it's going to be $60,000. I budget 75 or 80, just in case. You have to pad it a little bit because renos usually end up costing more than you think.
Yeah.
So I take 500,000, 80% of it, $80,000 reno budget. I'm at 320. Okay. That's the max allowable offer as a flipper. If you want to wholesale it to a flipper, now you got to add in a little bit of spread for your wholesale fee as well. So my max allowable offer on that type of property, if I wanted to make $20,000, probably going to be about $300,000.
So you mentioned that you do virtual wholesaling. How would you then come up with the renovation budget?
Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to do this, and I've done a few different systems, but what I do now is a virtual process. Okay,
got it.
I'm going to admit there's certain limitations to this type of model, but there's a lot of perks to it. Well, one perk is that you save a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to drive over to sellers' houses. But what we do is we consult the seller on what all the work that needs to be done at the house. Sometimes they actually send us footage of the house before we get it under contract, but they usually don't. They usually tell us everything that they think is wrong with the house, or that could be, improved to increase the value.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Seller, you're telling me that, the house is in good condition. Can you define, you say it's in great condition. When were the floors and kitchen last changed? Oh, yeah, we did that in 1970. Okay. So, Mr. Great. Seller, that's amazing. They're amazing. It's great that you maintain them. So, look, in today's market, is it fair enough to say that today's buyers would want, a newly renovated kitchen? A family's moving in, and they say, yeah, of course. They're usually going to agree when we kind of break it down that way. It's in good condition. We have to define what that even means. Okay. Yeah. So then we've determined, all right, this house was last renovated in 1970. Everything is 50 years old. What about, this is a grandma's house, but I'm giving you a classic wholesale lead, grandma's house. How was the roof? I replaced it 2 years ago. How about the furnace, the AC? All that's up to date. I replaced it 2-3 years ago. For some reason, grandma's house, they like to take care of all the mechanical stuff. They want to know that the house is safe and sound, but they don't update it, cosmetically speaking. So, so then I tell the seller, okay, great. Look, Today's buyers, they're very picky. They want everything brand new. So I appreciate that you've maintained the house very, very good. As a company that we could come in, we might might buy the house and renovate it. We might renovate it and turn it into a rental, or we might flip it off to one of our partners. Today's buyers, they want fully renovated properties. Is it safe to say how much square footage is your house? Ask them all the questions. Is it safe to say that, we might end up doing a cosmetic renovation? Because once I change the floors, I'm going to have to change the kitchen to make it match. Is that right? And they're like, yes. Okay. So it's a full cosmetic renovation. Great. All right. You're asking, how do I get to the budget? You're going to, at the beginning, if you have no experience, you're going to have to ask other people that have experience in renovations, for example, how much does it cost to replace the kitchen? Yeah. Cabinets, countertops, all this stuff. You need a kind of a baseline, an estimate to go off of. I had zero experience. With this when I started. I remember one of my first seller calls. The seller said he had a tankless water heater. I said nothing because I didn't know what it even means. And he kept talking, and then he realized I literally knew nothing. It's like, you don't know a lot you haven't bought a lot of houses, have you? I'm like, no, sir. But I'm interested in buying yours. So look, when you're starting out, you're going to have to ask some questions to figure out what that could be. If you don't know at the beginning, you don't have to play it off like you know. It's okay. You can tell a seller, listen, how old is everything? Okay, the floors are 15 years old, the counters are 20 years old. Okay, I'm going to run some numbers. I'm going to get back to you in a day or two. Make some calls, find some other investors, ask them how much it costs to replace a countertop. Ask another investor how much it costs, per square foot to get new flooring. It's okay to ask those questions. And then you're going to have a baseline. That's the bottom line. You're going to kind of have an understanding. And when you make an offer to a seller, you don't have to use exact numbers, right? Because rentals aren't exact anyways.
Yeah.
So that's how I do it virtually. Okay, look, Mr. Seller, it's a 1,200 square foot house. Cosmetically, we're looking at 60 to 90K reno, right? Is that fair enough to say? Usually they'll be okay with that.
Okay.
Kind of a drawn out answer, but I wanted to give you some perspective on it.
Yeah, thanks for that. In addition to that, I know there's something that we also do. It's not necessarily on the reno side. It's more on the top line, which is the ARV, right? Because if you get the ARV wrong, then everything is off, right? So
yes, the ARV is what you don't want to get wrong. Renovation budget, you're off 10, 20K. Right?
Exactly.
You might, right? You're probably still okay. If you're off on ARV, everything's way off.
And for me, I find that's the most critical number, because that's the number that actually determines if your buyers make money or lose money. So if you are off on the ARV and you assign that deal to someone and you are way off, that person is losing money for sure, guaranteed. So on the ARV, you had something to say?
I think I agree with you, but the buyer should not necessarily just go off your own comps. If I'm buying a wholesale, I buy a lot of wholesales too. Wholesalers, if you got deals, bring them over to me. Let me have a look at them, because I buy a lot of those too. If I'm a buyer and a wholesaler puts out a deal and they have 3 or 4 comps, and I look at them, I'm not going to buy it just based on that, right? I'm going to do my own due diligence. For 100%, sure.
100%. 100%. So there's definitely a place for due diligence, and everyone should do that due diligence. Even wholesalers shouldn't be there's a place for ethics as well. You don't want to put out false comps. You don't want to put out numbers that are not legit. And you also never want your buyers to lose money. But the point I was trying to make...
Absolutely. I think it's, you know what? It's a very ethical thing. As a wholesaler, it's a very ethical thing. You put out bogus deals, you might actually assign 1 or 2 of them. But I don't really believe that you can run a business throughout all the years over and over again if you just playing around with bogus numbers. And wholesaling is a very ethical business. It's very difficult to run a small business consistently if you're not ethical. So you have to be ethical.
Spot on. And the episode before this, we spoke about, just the legalities of wholesaling, because there's a lot of perception about wholesaling. Is it ethical? Is it legal? So thanks for pointing that out. What I wanted to mention about the ARVs was, in a market like today, what we do is, if, for example, as you said, the ARV is 500,000, we would actually take into account what renovations need to be done, as you rightly pointed out. How long are those renovations going to be done? So if it's going to take like 3 months for the buyer to actually close on the property, start the renovations, finish it, put it on the market, sell, for the title to actually change hands, because you still pay the mortgage until the title changes hands. So if that entire process is going to take 3 months for the buyer to actually exit, because it's only when the buyer exits that the ARV comes into question. So if it's going to take 3 months, I'm going to say, hey, what's Bank of Canada doing in the next 3 months? If they're going to have 2 interest rate hikes in 2 months, I'm like, okay, so by March, there's going to be maybe a 1% hike on the 26th of January. Sorry, on the 25th. There's going to be another 1% hike in March. That's going to take this ARV from 500 to say maybe 400. The ARV I'm going to use today will be 400.
I understand.
So that way, the chances of getting the deal accepted obviously becomes lower, but it sort of guarantees that you're making money on the buy.
I understand. I think there is something to be said about projecting where the market could be in 4 to 6 months. As a wholesaler, I will put it into consideration, but I may not look like 6 months ahead from the time. However, if I'm running my own numbers as a flipper, right? Mm-hmm. I told you about the napkin math. If you've been doing napkin math for a while, eventually you should move to a spreadsheet that can calculate all these things. That, for example, you can change the amount of months that a flipper would be holding this property. And in this market environment, what I've found to be very helpful, aside from what you just mentioned as well, is, let's say you have a property that would take you, let's say 3 to 4 months. That's what you think it would take. It's a really easy reno. You close on it. You do a 4 to 6 week reno. You list it. You sell it. That could be like a 3-month project. But before we would actually put 4 months in our projections.
Okay.
I'm not putting 4 months anymore. I'm putting 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Because you got to be prepared that it's going to take longer to get the property sold, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay. You just got to work it into your numbers and make sure the deal still works for you.
So that's another way. So we're essentially saying the same thing. We are building buffers, right?
Correct.
You are building buffers on the length of time it's going to take for the deal to sell. I'm building buffers on how much it's going to sell at, right? So it could be anything. We could build buffers on the rental budgets. We could build buffers on how much is the realtor going to charge. Am I going to incentivize the realtor with more commission to get the deal sold? Like, you could build buffers across the line items. And I think if you do that, the chances of losing money in this market is at least lower than, if you just went, like without any buffers whatsoever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. So many
in-depth wholesaling stuff.
That was like deal analysis 101, or maybe like 909.
That's 909. I don't think that's the 101. That's the complicated stuff.
But yeah, it's interesting how the way we make offers are slightly changing. At least from my own standpoint, I find that making traditional offers are not as easily accepted like they used to before. Just saying, hey, 60 cents on the dollar, 50, 40. And now we are leaning towards maybe making more creative offers. Like, do you find that in this type of market, do you find that you need to make more creative offers, or would you always find buyers who are willing to sell for like pennies on the dollar?
All right. Okay, so here's my thoughts on that. Number one, get more leads. The leads are abundant right now. The cost per leads are actually dropped drastically for us compared to last year, right? So for me, I'd rather just get more leads overall, and even if I have a lower closing ratio on them, I'd rather have more leads in the pile. Now, you started talking about pricing. So certain things that are happening in the market are affecting what the sellers can even accept.
Okay.
So if, for example, a house was worth $8,000 and our offer would have been, or the ARV was 800,000.
Okay.
At the market peak, and the seller at the market peak might have taken, let's say, 575, 600,000.
Yeah.
But then the market drops down, and the ARV of the house now, let's say it's in Hamilton. The ARV's gone down like 30, 40%. So the ARV is like $500,000 now. And our offer, if we want to use the same math, is like $300,000 now. That could be a problem if the seller doesn't have enough equity.
Got it.
Right? So, number one, they have to have enough equity for your cash offer. If you try to get creative with that, I mean, you can offer a vendor take back, but
there isn't so much
if they bought this house in the last 3, 4, 5 years and they bought it for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000,
then it doesn't even cover the mortgage.
No, it doesn't. Right. So when I hear a lot of people talking about creative offers, I think about really cheap priced markets. We're talking about Timmins, Sault Ste. Marie, places like this. Yeah, absolutely. All day long. Thunder Bay, creative offer, 100% VTB. Mr. Seller, I got a deal for you. 100% VTB.
So you know what? Yeah, go on.
But overall, my mindset about it is just get more leads, make more cash offers. If you want to get creative, I wouldn't look at doing the creative financing. I might look at doing something else that's creative, because the majority of the time that the leads that I've seen, they don't have enough equity right now to make that a play. In GTA, we're talking about GTA. You know, if it's in Sault Ste. Marie, Thunder Bay, whatever, yeah, sure, do that.
So that position that you mentioned is actually correct. We have quite a number of our leads right now, and I would say maybe 8 out of 10 that fall in the bucket of they bought the house in the last 1 or 2 years, or they have negative equity. And what we're looking to do going forward is we've broken it down into scenarios, right? So there's like 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 is this seller has equity in the house. So as you mentioned, they have equity in the house. The conversation that we're going to explore is VTB, because they have the equity to provide that creative financing. Now, should they not have enough equity, like you pointed out, if they have negative equity or they bought it at a high price and now the market is slower, VTB wouldn't necessarily apply, right? We will start exploring options like deferred closing. So taking possession of the property now, not closing now, waiting till the market comes back up so that the values, are back to where it was, and then close at that point. But the seller is going to hand off the property to you, right? There's going to be a few legalities around that and why the seller would do that. But essentially, you take over the payments for that customer's mortgage. Hopefully it's low, like the rates are low because they got it when the rates were low, right? So for you are okay paying or taking over those payments because it's low enough. And then when the building comes back, you then close. Or even just assuming the mortgage, just taking it over, assuming it and, taking over the payment. So I think it's more like, yeah?
Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
So
go ahead.
It's really, I think, scenario based. And we're trying to tackle things that way going forward, like based off of the seller scenario at the time, what's a creative option that would work for that seller's unique situation where it could be win-win, right? Because the market is going to come back at some point. We just don't know when, right? It could be 6 months, it could be 1 year, it could be a year and a half too.
Absolutely. I like to be creative, but I would just say this. I even more than I like being creative, I like to keep it simple. For me, I'm not saying this is the right answer because, you have to, in this market, you got to put in a lot of work to make what I'm talking about. You got to put in a lot of work to make it work. But for me, I rather literally just if you told me that it costs X number of dollars, like $200 per lead. I'm not giving, these are not real numbers, but let's just say it was $200 per lead before the market got like this, where the interest rates went up.
Yeah.
And now you tell me that I can buy leads for $100 each. Just give me as many leads as you can give me.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. I don't need to be creative. Just give me all the leads. That's fine with me, right? So I'll do that. Rather than getting creative, I'd rather just figure out, okay, how can I get a lot of cheap leads? Yeah. Now that may not be the right strategy for everyone, right? Especially if you're in a market where if you can do anything creative, fantastic. I think that's an amazing strategy. But for me, right now, where I'm at in my life and my business, buy leads for pennies on the dollar. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for shedding light on that, man.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very, interesting conversation now. And I know when you speak with a lot of investors, that's really the top of the conversation, right? Like, hey, how are you making offers? A lot of deals right now are more creative than they would have been when it was a seller's market. Okay. So do you find that it takes longer now? Because you mentioned that when you do your deals, you would, instead of 4 months, you would put 8 months, 9 months. We recently assigned a deal that took us 8 months. So to your point, from when we did the campaign to closing, it was 8 months.
Yes. Okay, got it.
And you mentioned 90-day sales cycle. This was 90 days, twice, 90 days, 3 times, So it was 8 months.
Yeah, almost 3 times. Yeah, almost 3 times.
Yeah, almost 3 times. So, but for us, it probably didn't feel or seem that long because we just follow up. How important would you say follow up has been for you in your business?
Okay, fortune's in the follow up. It's everything.
That's gold, man.
So even on a 90-day sales cycle, let's say that we're just working with the average sales cycle, then I'll speak to the ones that you're talking about because there's a lot of leads like that too. But even on a 90-day sales cycle, when you have a seller that the property's distressed and they have extreme personal distress, and then it becomes a situation where they want to sell quickly for whatever reason, something just triggers them. And then they're like, I need to sell right now. Okay. They have a stack of letters. Yeah. I want to buy your house for cash. I want to buy your house. All these letters, blue letter, red letter, yellow letter, all the colors, right? And they just say, all right, I want to sell my house for cash. And they decide to pick up the phone and call a few of those letters. That action for them, that person, that might seem like they made enormous amounts of action because someone that's extremely stressed out, what I've found you would think that they would be doing everything possible to sell the house. In my experience, these type of people, they're kind of putting their head in the sand. They're very hard to get a hold of, right? And even if you get a hold of them once, you're probably going to have to call them 10 more times to get them on the phone. They're not avoiding you. They just don't want to pick up the phone anymore. For some reason, I've had people that are about to lose their house, right? No. Who knows who else is calling them, right?
True.
So they don't want to pick up the phone for anybody, right? Hopefully you can be the person that, is persistent enough to be able to reach them. Now, in regards, that's not even in a 90-day sales cycle. So no matter what you do, even if these people sell their house almost right away, they usually are very hard to get a hold of. Now, the long sales cycle people, follow-up becomes even more crucial. So I'll give you an example. We had a seller out in Perry Sound. It was a 2-unit house. It was a duplex. and they were going through some kind of estate sales thing. And there was this tenant that was just ridiculous in there. I remember her calling us for the first time. I have an acquisition guy, so he called me. He's like, "Hey, I got this lead. It's a hot lead." Okay, tell me about it. Yeah, there's like this a mother who is handling an estate of the grandmother, and there's a bad tenant. I'm like, how bad? No access to the property. Cops have been called multiple times to the property for various reasons. Okay, it's bad. So when are we getting this under contract? And he's like, well, let me work on that. That was like January of that year. And we got it under contract in end of October.
Whoa. 10 months.
Yes. But the thing is, okay, so this person, we just kept following up. We're politely persistent. We just keep following up with this person. And the thing was that they were not ready to put the deal on paper for various reasons. They're going through crazy stress with this property. It was all kinds of stuff was happening, right? They weren't ready to put the deal on paper. When it actually came to the point where they're ready to put it on paper, we got it under contract. We tried to get, I remember this, we tried to get access to property. Cops got called because they couldn't get in the first time. And then we went back the next day. So I had to put one of my guys in a hotel because this is all the way up in Perry Sounds. He goes to a hotel. He has to go back the next day because now we have like a police escorted walk through the property. And yeah, it was a fixer-upper for sure, but we got everything we needed. And then we put the deal on for wholesale, big wholesale fee, multiple offers, right? The fortunes in the follow-up. If we had given up at any point in time, that deal's not happening at all. There was a lot of complications, right? The seller wanted to sell the whole time, but they're not willing to put it on paper for some reason or another. You can't force these people to do anything. There's no point of using pressure. You know, it's better if you just offer to be of service to that person, whatever that looks like. And some people need time.
There's always a right time for them. I recall one of the deals that we had in Windsor. The seller for months, didn't want to sell to us. And then they had to sell their house. We helped them make offers on a house. We got them the house, we got them the mortgage. And then it was like, oh, now that I have an offer for a new house, how do I pay for this new house? Oh, I have to sell my house. And then now the urgency is there now. Oh, now I have to sell. Now I have to sell. Now it has to close. It has to close before my purchase closes. So boom. So
that's
spot
a good
on.
point.
I think
that you just raised a good point. People's urgency levels can change instantaneously.
Exactly.
So if you don't follow up, you might miss that moment.
You would never know. Exactly. There was another scenario of a seller. We offered them, I think, maybe $390. They didn't take it. And then they went with a real estate agent and they eventually sold for like $320. And when we asked, we said, hey, we offered you way more. Why did you sell? They were like, at the time when they were making the offer, there were a few changes that happened. And at that point, they were like, they just want to get done with it. Like their urgency levels just changed. And unfortunately, they were already under contract with the real estate agent versus us. So you just never know when the seller's urgency levels change. You want to ensure that you're consistently following up so that when those levels change, you are the first person that they call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
Man, you're dropping so many bombs in this episode, man.
You are too. I got to keep up with you right now.
Okay, man. So you've walked us through how the business is run. And for people who are maybe new to wholesaling, the art of getting a deal under contract really is not wholesaling. Wholesaling is only when you assign that deal, which is the disposition side of things. So I know a lot of people say, oh, I want to do wholesaling, and they're referring to the acquisition side. No, acquisition is separate. Disposition, which is where you make the money, is different. Because if you have the best deal under contract and you have the paper and you don't have a buyer, well, you're not making money, right? So
wholesaling is an exit strategy. That's what it is.
Exit strategy, exactly. So do you mind walking us through what disposition is, like what wholesaling is, not necessarily the acquisition side, getting things under contract, but the disposition side of actually getting money from the paper that you have?
Okay. So when you get a property under contract, off market, a discounted property, and you have an assignment clause that allows you to assign your equitable interest in the property. That's the legal terminology, right?
Yeah.
The act of that is what we call wholesaling. It's taking a property at wholesale price and selling it for a higher price. So you're selling it for wholesale pricing, right? The act of that, okay, once I get a deal under contract, I will figure out a way to prepare marketing for the property. That typically involves preparing footage of the property, photo and video footage, that someone would need to use to determine if they want to buy the property. We're going to prepare a marketing package. Typically, we utilize an email marketing list, right? But I've seen other wholesalers do things like text messaging lists as well. Just a way to get people's eyes on the property. So you're going to prepare marketing.
It's just marketing.
It's just marketing. So you're going to prepare marketing. From the time that you prepare marketing, the next step is you get phone calls of interested buyers. People want to buy this property. And your job as somebody that's wholesaling and disposing the property, doing this is called dispositions. If you're doing dispositions, your role now is to speak and contact all the interested parties and determine out of the interested parties who's the right buyer for this property. Now, you might only have one buyer, and then that one buyer is your right buyer, assuming they're qualified. But if you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people that are interested in this property, because if it's discounted, there's a good chance there's going to be multiple interested parties.
Correct.
The art of disposition is sorting out those buyers, determining who is the best buyer for you.
What does a right buyer mean?
Okay. Price is important, obviously. So I know people are thinking, yeah, it's the one who pays the highest price.
Not always.
Right?
Who can close? Who can close?
Number one, the person who can close and is a serious buyer. That's not going to make my life difficult.
Oh, man.
Number one. Number two, price.
Exactly, man. I was going to say, who can close is number one. Honestly, bro, there's so many times that a few days to closing. So you know how they say if you don't get a call, everything is going well. If a few days to closing, you get a call.
I'm calling them. I'm calling them. I don't want to get a call. I'm calling you.
I don't want to get a call from you, man. What's going on? So the heartache that happens a few days to closing when you get that call, trust me, I want to discuss who can close. That's number one. And then, as you said, price. So yeah, go on. Like, yeah, we are aligned there.
Okay, so man, there's so many learning experiences. I got to figure out how to share it quickly on the podcast. I have a series of clauses that I put into my assignment agreement. This is part of the art of dispositions. We have several clauses. Every single one of, like when I first started assigning deals, we had just literally one clause: pay the assignment fee on closing. That was my first assignment deal, right? And then eventually I figured something out. Okay, I need to put that the assignee, the buyer, understands they're buying the property as is, where it is. Okay, that's a new clause. Okay, now another clause. Everyone's responsible for paying their own legal fees. Okay, now another clause. We need this. Now another clause. We need that. right? So dealing with buyers, eventually you start to learn what to put in your agreements to protect yourself legally. You also
Correct.
learn what to actually ask a buyer to vet them correctly. So for example, have you ever bought a wholesale before? No, this probably is not for you.
Red flag.
May or may not be a red flag, but it's probably not for you, right?
Well, if that's the only buyer, then you would try to work with that. In some cases, they've worked. In some cases, it's come with headaches, right? It usually comes with headaches.
I would make sure that they got a lot of cash available, like that they're really ready to do this deal if they've never done a wholesale. We've worked with people like this before, right? But we're going to vet them very hard, right? We want to work with them, but we got to vet them. If, for example, someone's buying a flip property, right? And they say that they've never bought a flip before. Like, okay, have you bought any deal? Like, what's your experience buying properties like this? Oh, I got no experience. I just saw something on HGTV, and this is a good deal. Probably not for you. We're looking to work with experience. We're looking to work with experienced buyers, right? So, although those are real legitimate buyers, if I have a choice and I have multiple buyers, this is the art of dispositions, right? We're going to find that person that's a vetted, legit buyer that's done 10 flips before. They've done similar types of deals in similar locations, and this deal's easy for them. There's not going to be any hangups on closing. They got the money, They got the experience, they got the team, they got everything. All right, let's roll, baby.
And to your point of building a $1 million business, right? Like you probably wouldn't make $1 million on one wholesale deal. You probably want to do many deals. So it will get to a point where you get a call from a qualified buyer. Hey, I've bought 10, 15, 20 deals, I'm qualified. And you vet them and they're like, and you get the sense that, okay, these people are qualified. You just want to do the deal and move on and like chase the next deal versus, hey, is your financing in place? Oh, you didn't know that you needed, okay, let me get you someone who's going to walk you through the process. I find that there's more time spent in hand-holding if, the deal is assigned to someone who's relatively new. So that's one of the criteria that we use, right, to reduce. Like I've had 2 cases where I work with a fantastic mortgage broker, by the way. Shout out to Kenny from the Friendly Mortgage team. In 2 different occasions, he has come through to save my wholesale deals. So you
just dropped a golden nugget. I forgot to even mention that. We got one of those.
So I always So I always have a private mortgage ready for the buyer should their financing not work, because that deal has to close. So, so they come a few days, my bank said this. Oh, they did? You know what? I could introduce you to Kenny. He's going to help you out. And then those guys are helped out and they close. And we would give them a discount off the wholesale fee to cover the difference in the payment. So if, for example, the residential mortgage was maybe 2%, the payment was like $1,000, and the private was maybe 5, 6, and the payments was like $1,500. The additional $500, for a year, for example, so 500 times 12, you say, what, they're going to give you $6,000 back to cover that additional. So we just try to ensure that the deal closes, because if the deal doesn't close, it's 0. Like everyone gets 0. Right?
Absolutely. I want to share something that's very important. So number one, actually, you just shared something that's a huge golden nugget. So I have 2 disposition managers. One of them's actually a mortgage broker, and I have another mortgage broker in the backup. So we got mortgage brokers on top of mortgage brokers. So if the buyer's legit, we will find a way to get it closed, period. Right? But second to that, you need to think about what type of skin in the game the buyer's going to have. True. If they're going to do a wholesale deal with you.
Deposits.
Here's what I mean. Deposits, right? If the buyer gives you $500 deposit, for example, they can walk away easily, right? But we've also had buyers that give us $50,000 deposits. Now, if a buyer is willing to give me a $50,000 deposit on a property that's, for example, $500,000, I probably don't even need to ask them any more questions. They're not walking
Yeah.
away from that deal because they're going to lose the deposit if they walk away. And
Comfort level just went up.
Correct. So I'll share this. I've had only one deal, firm assignment, blow up. And it was the one deal I accepted a low deposit.
Okay, that's a good nugget there, right? So always optimize for comfort levels, like skin in the game, essentially. The higher the deposits, even if you want to pull out, you have skin in the game.
Correct. So if a buyer is giving you, for example, maybe you never worked with them before, you don't know who they are, they're saying the right things, but you still don't know, but they're giving you like 10% deposit, and that's like $30,000. They're probably not going to walk away from the deal. They're probably legit, so
that definitely gives me comfort, because once they put the funds with my lawyer, I'm like, okay, this is comforting. It's comforting because the contract says it's non-refundable, should the deal close, should the deal not close if it was their fault, right? So it's comforting.
Correct. Now, it is their fault. Okay, let's say the deal blows up. It's their fault. Let's say that a buyer puts down $30K deposit and my assignment fee is $25K. Now, it's non-refundable because it's a firm deal now. If the deal blows up for some reason, my assignment fee is covered out of that deposit. So I don't even need to worry about that. But if somebody was putting down that much of a deposit and they came to us, let's say 3 weeks before closing, and they say, listen, I have one private lender. It looks like we ran into a bit of a snag there.
Yep.
Let's talk. Can we talk about this? And I'm like, okay. I ethically and morally do not want you to lose your $30,000.
Yep.
Let me figure out all the different ways to get you financing here, right? Yep. I know it's like I don't have any, my assignment fee secure, but I don't want to let my buyer lose money, right?
100%.
So if somebody's willing to give me a serious deposit, I'm on their side. I'm in their corner, and I'm going to make sure the deal gets done, no matter what it takes, right? So, basically what that goes to say is that if somebody is serious with us as a wholesaler, we're serious with them. We're going to give them full commitment, white glove service.
Spot on, man. So what would you say the average wholesale fees are in Ontario?
Okay. Average wholesale fees in Ontario. I think for most wholesalers, it's going to depend on what kind of contacts you have. Now, the more contacts you have, the higher your average wholesale fee can go. And to speak to that, I have a much more seasoned and developed buyers list than I did at the beginning.
Okay.
Right? I got repeat buyers. I got lots and lots and lots of investors on my list. It's been built up over the years. I would say probably for most wholesalers, they're looking at like $20,000 or $25,000 average gross assignment fee, gross profit on assignment fee. For someone that's experienced pulling a lot of deals and they're like a full-time wholesaler, you might see between like $30,000 and $40,000 average assignment fee.
So technically, you need to do, once you do 4 to 5 wholesale deals in Ontario, you're basically hitting 6 figures. Probably.
Certainly by the time you've done 10, you're not going to average $10,000 assignment fees. By the time you've done 10 assignment fees, you're probably like way in 6 figures, right? So.
Yeah. Okay. This is just gold. So many scenarios are coming up. We could actually keep this conversation going. But I just want to say, thanks for dropping all those bombs, man. This episode will go down in history, man, as the episode to listen to. If you want to get into wholesaling, if you want to know just how to make money, how to build a business. So thank you very, very much for your time, man, and your insights and sharing live and direct insights from how a 7-figure business works.
Thank you so much, Deji, for having me on the calls. Like, my pleasure is all mine, man. It's so much fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, before we let you go, we have a question of the show, right? Which is, what would you say your greatest L in real estate is? And what have you learned from it?
You asked me this right before we got on the show, right? So
I did.
Okay, this is a spicy question. Like, I'm not even sure how to answer this one. Okay. There's a couple things that are coming to mind. There's a couple things. Number one, choose your partners very carefully. I've had some really great partnerships with other investors. We have some amazing partnerships on deals, but I've also had some partnerships that have not gone well. And as good as a deal is on paper, the operators behind it really matter, right? So if I'm looking at a deal and I'm going to partner with someone, I don't like the deal matters, but the person matters that I'm partnering with way, way more than the deal. So that's number one. It's okay if I share two things?
Yeah.
Two things really come to mind right away. The other biggest L, I'm not going to fault myself for this at all. No regrets. But I like to play a big game. So going into 2022, I had loaded up on a bunch of flips. Like, I loaded up on like 20 flips. I had a lot of flips going, right?
I know where the story is going.
Well, the market goes down 30, 40%, luckily I'm making money on almost all of them, but some of them were taking some hits, like some decent chunks of hits too. Yeah. Here's how I would share this with somebody that's going through the same. Right now I got a lot of people calling me, sharing their story, other flippers, right? They know I flip and they know I wholesale. And so they talk to me about their flips. Hey, look, I'm having a hard time with my projects and we're trying to refinance. We can't refinance. We're trying to sell it. It's not selling for what I thought it would sell for. And we're running into problems, right? Look, guys, if you're going through that, if you play a big game and you play to win, you'll eventually take some L's. Just take it with grace. Everyone loses sometime.
Always going to happen.
Yes. And if you play a really big game, it's eventually going to happen. You just got to take it with grace. Keep it moving. And, these times, they don't last forever, right? So as for me, big L, I loaded up on a bunch of flips. The timing wasn't the most ideal. I remember how fast the market shifted because I had my most profitable flip. And then it just the market just started going down the next week after I sold that one. And we've had a couple that we've taken some losses on. So you got to be okay to do this. If you're going to play this game, if you're going to play the flipping game, you have to be at peace with yourself if you lose money. That's what I would say.
Superb answer, bro. Okay. Thank you for that. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
No problem. Thank you very much.
And where can people connect with you? Because after this episode, you should be getting thousands of DMs, thousands of emails, just reaching out. So if you want people to reach out to you, where can they reach out to you?
Okay. On social media, you can find me at official Michael Lee. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. That's the easiest ways to get a hold of me. You can also shoot me an email, mike@416homebuyer.ca. And if you're an investor and you're looking to connect, be happy to chat.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Mike. And that's it, folks. We hope everything you've learned about wholesaling was very beneficial to you today. As always, thanks for listening to the Real Estate Wholesaling podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. And be sure to hit that subscribe button, that notification button, so that you know when this episode drops and when subsequent episodes drop. So until then, remember, a deal a day keeps scarcity at bay. Thank you, guys.
Whoa, I love it.